live on the air. I'm Richard Saile.
This is wild.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Lounge Time. I'm your host, Rich Saile, and on today's episode of 2026 Offseason Grades, we go over the last team in the AFC East to cover, the New York Jets, which, I'll admit, when I was grading this, I was a little shocked at what I landed at, but when you hear the reasons out, you might understand, okay, there's a different way we have to grade teams off seasons, and this is the perfect example I can say along with the Lions episode, which, again, everybody does off seasons differently. The Jets have different expectations in mind, and we're about to go over that right now. So, the New York Jets. They were bad last year. It's well said. They had one of the biggest selling moments of the trade deadline by getting rid of Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams and gaining more first-round picks, not just this year, in 2027, which is going to be a big talking point on this show for not just the season, but for this series right now, because that draft class is loaded this year. A lot of great players out there that could be guys that are really, really good. Now, let's go over what the Jets did this offseason. So, building on their draft capital they got from the trade deadline last season, they brought back Geno Smith, who used to play for the Jets, moving on from Justin Fields, as Geno Smith is now the starting quarterback this season. Also drafted Cade Klubnik in the 4th round of this past draft from Clemson, which I want to make jokes right now about the Jets being the real QB purgatory, because they are the place that QBs get absolutely buried and jokingly in Siberia. Just ask how happy Sam Darnold is to be out of the Jets. Okay? like, just ask him how happy he is to get the hell out of there. Okay? There's probably one more that I'm escaping right now. I mean, I'm trying to go through the thousands of names. The Jets have had a quarterback the last 5 years, maybe 10. Like, Zach Wilson's now in Denver as a backup at times. Okay? And, man, it's a long list. Okay? But Cade Klubnik, it's going to be rough over there. Geno, he's done, okay? But I get why they had to go with a veteran, because Justin Fields moved on. He didn't work out there. Cade Klubnik, they needed somebody for now. But they also traded away edge rusher Jermaine Johnson for nose tackle T'Vondre Sweat for the Titans, which you kind of got the sense that Saile wanted to bring in his guys, and he drafted Jermaine Johnson, was one of those guys. He did draft T'Vondre Sweat, get some help on the nose guard spot, nose tackle, and then Harrison Phillips, who's been a 3-4 defensive tackle, 3-4 defensive end. They wanted to beef up the defensive tackle department, which, again, he brings some winning experience from Minnesota and Buffalo the last couple of years. So they're trying to beef up the defensive line and get some bodies up front to stop the run. Will McDonald, they extended the 5th-year option on, and then they tendered Breece Hall. So keeping their own, they didn't let talent walk out the door in the offseason, which was smart moves, because Brees Hall, they had to be blown away with the trade package. They were not. It was close to the trade deadline. Will McDonald, he had a really productive season for them last year. And again, they're not just going to let him walk. So fifth-year option makes sense for them, trying to keep some talent that they have. And then for defensive signings, they actually did some good. They actually got some good players. Deshaun Wright from the Bears at corner. They needed corner bad. He had a career-high 5 interceptions last season. Minkah Fitzpatrick, who was from Jersey, okay? They brought him over from Miami. So some veteran help at safety. And then Andre Sisco, they also brought to help out safety depth as well. And then they also brought back another former Jet, Demario Davis, back to the Jets from New Orleans. And he may be old, but he's a good veteran linebacker to help teach the young guys, which is what they need. And I don't mind the moves that Aaron Glenn and company made on defense. I think these are guys that fit what he wants to be as far as a physical defense, that guys that hawk to the ball, Deshaun Wright being one of those guys, Minkah being a very smart player that can play slot corner, that can play deep safety, he can play in the box. He even blocked field goal kicks. He did, not this past season, but once upon a time he did. So he can do a lot of different things well. I like him as a player. And I think it's good to have some good veterans that can still play. And Minkah being now back where he's from, that's a good signing for the Jets. I'm not going to lie there. Their draft class is, in my opinion, this is one of the best early round classes they've had. And it's a lot back from 4 years ago when they had guys like Jermaine Johnson II, Sauce Gardner was in that draft class, Garrett Wilson was in that draft class. That was another draft class where they had 3 first-round picks. And all 3 of those guys ended up being pretty damn good for them. 2 of them, they let walk out the door from the previous regime. So now, this draft with 3 first-round picks, they managed to trade up to number 30 from their from one of their early picks. But first, they took Texas Tech edge rusher David Bailey. This guy is going to be scary good. I mean, he has some nasty first step, and he's quick. He's got great speed rush from the edge rushing position. This guy, when I watched Texas Tech against Oregon, he flashed. And he's going to be a guy that he's going to get double-digit sacks a couple times in the season. He's going to. And he's going to be an impact player. Question is, can they manage to make this defense work with him being just a raw rookie? I think he's going to have double-digit sacks for multiple seasons for the Jets. Second first-round pick they ended up with, a guy I really liked, and I knew that once he had a great combine, he was going to get drafted early. Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon, the tight end. I'm like, oh my God, he's in my division. Another player I really like. Now, there's guys that are inevitable, like David Bailey. Yeah, he's going to the Jets. Like, you know the Jets are going with one of them, okay? You just hope that once in a blue moon they screw up. Now, again, non-biasedly, I love the Bailey pick too. Sadiq is another one I love. This guy, he is a guy that, again, when I watched Oregon, he jumped out. Not great blocking, but he's a very good receiving tight end. And I think he's going to be a productive tight end, another weapon for a young quarterback to walk into with Garrett Wilson already there. And you got Brees Hall. And the next guy I'm going to bring up, Indiana wide receiver Omar Cooper Jr., which is a guy that is unselfish. He can block, he can catch. He does a lot of things that you love at the wide receiver spot. And again, I think this is a really good pick that, again, Garrett Wilson's your 1. He can be a number 2. He does the blocking. He has been clutch. Go look at the Penn State game-winning touchdown he had from Mendoza that he had. That was an insane catch. All right? He's a guy that does everything at the wide receiver spot. And then D'Angelo Pons, the corner from Indiana in round 2. They compared him to Aaron Glenn, and I'm like, you know what? I do see a little bit of Aaron Glenn and D'Angelo Ponce. So I get that pick. And that's another really good move. Again, 5'9". Aaron Glenn was about 5'9" himself. So I love the early start to the Jets draft, and I think these guys are going to be all really productive players. My problem is with them, and this is their biggest question, and again, I know the real Jet fans will agree with me on this. Player development. Because they can develop pretty damn good players except the quarterback spot. Some of these guys, they developed pretty shitty too. These guys, to me, it's all about how they're developed. Player development is the one problem with the Jets they've never gotten right. Back to the Rex Ryan days was when they last did it really well. Even before, with maybe some of the guys from Mangini's time with the Jets, Revis was a guy that they developed really well for them. Okay. I'm trying to think of a couple other guys, maybe some of their Herm Edwards, but the last 15 years post Rex Ryan, they have not developed guys well. Even in the back half of Rex Ryan's tenure, they didn't really do a great job with certain guys. So, again, there's names I can remember that come to mind, the Jets botching development-wise. If they can develop these four guys and some of these other guys, this team might be a little better than I'm thinking they're going to be. And I'm a Patriot fan saying this, okay? I believe they had a nice balance of signing veterans and young guys to fill in multiple holes on this roster, okay? And there are holes. I don't think quarterback is solved. I don't think interior offensive line is solved because Elijah Vera-Tucker went out the door to division rival, New England Patriots. Linebacker group doesn't feel completely solved since Geno and Demario Davis are in their late 30s, okay? Now, let me go to Aaron Glenn being on the hot seat because this is a name that I'm hearing a lot of people say is on the hot seat. And do I think it's fair in year two that he is on the hot seat? Yes, in some ways. No, in some ways. No, because number one, he was walking into a situation that he really couldn't make go up. What do I mean by that? Well, the Jets lost Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams that year. Like, they went out with the Aaron Rodgers people last year, and we kind of knew they would not be great last year. They were not going to be a good team. Okay? And they were not the most talented team in that division because all three, talent-wise, Miami, Patriots, Bills, were all talented in the Jets. So they were the least talented team in that division. It was going to be a rough first year, which it was. But the fact that they were willing to fire him possibly at the end of year one, I felt was completely unfair. All right? We have to see at least 3 years what he can do. That's the new thing with coaches. But some guys, it's two, depending on how awful it gets. They actually did give Aaron Glenn some good veterans and some young guys that can contribute right away early. Question is how you develop them. And that's where if you develop them terribly in year one, year two for some guys, then you start saying, okay, maybe he's not developing them well. And that's where, to me, if they don't develop these guys well, then he's on the hot seat. But I think it's not ready yet. Next year, you want to talk about him being on the hot seat. Okay. Because I do think in realistic expectations, the Jets are better than Miami going into 2026. They are. Based on what I've all outlined. So Geno, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Omar Cooper Jr., with O'Donnell Mitchell, who they got with the Sauce Gardner trade. And then you have Mason Taylor and Kenyon Sadiq at tight end. I actually like that duo a lot. I think you're going to see a lot of these guys. You're going to see a lot of tight end duo sets. I think you're going to see some production out of those tight ends together. DT Sheffield is like a third-string wide receiver for the Jets. And then Tim Patrick's a nice veteran that Glenn, I'm sure, knows from the time at Detroit. And then Colin Lacey, third-string wide receiver. They don't really have they have some solid pieces, but I don't know if they can make enough playing time to get into the 53-man roster. The offensive line, Olu Fashanu, he just got drafted 2 years ago. He's got to show some development. Dylan Parham, Josh Myers, Joe Tippmann, Armand Membu, who was last year. So the tackles, I think we can say, are locks. Left to right tackle is fine. The interior part of this offensive line, I'm not convinced. I don't think these guys are locks that I would say you would feel comfortable, especially Geno not being as mobile as he once was. That's areas of concern for them. I think they need some beef at guard and center that worry me just a little bit. So I would expect the Jets to be more of a team that will be just like another bottom third of the league in offense. Maybe more run heavy with Brees a little bit, but they have guys that they could get involved in the passing game. Mason Taylor, Sadiq, Garrett Wilson, Adonai Mitchell, Cooper. So they might be below average in the passing category. Defensively, I don't love their D-line much. I'm actually shocked David Bailey's second on the depth chart here. I feel like that's a typo. There's no way. But if it is David Bailey, Will McDonald, Harrison Phillips, Tavondre Sweat, it's a solid defensive line. It's a solid defensive line. David Onyemata being a second-string defensive tackle. Mozzie Smith, Cowboys botch of a pick. He did not do well. I think this could be a solid defensive line. I don't know why Kingsley and Ngbarre is starting over Bailey. I feel like that's not right. Linebacker group, there's some holes there. Like, Demario Davis is a veteran, but you need somebody young that can fill in. And then Jameen Sherwood, he has good moments, some not so much. But Kiko Malagoa, I don't know if he's a guy that you go, okay, he could be a 3-4 down linebacker. Michael Walker, I think he was from Atlanta. Solid, but again, there's holes at that spot that don't have me convinced that they're going to be that much better on defense. Nashawn Wright, Andre Sisco, Minka, Brandon Stevens, Jarvis Brownlee Jr. as the starting secondary, and then you have Dane Belton with D'Angelo Pons as a backup nickel, and then this safety group, Malachi Moore, forgot about him. He was another one, I think round 4. I think it's an okay secondary. I think it's a little better than it was last year. Still with some holes. But this could be a below average defense. Like, they'll be better than were last year from a bottom 5 to maybe slightly below average. Maybe still in that bottom half of the league instead of bottom third. But I'm not convinced that they are just going to make a huge leap from what they've been. So the Jets, meanwhile, they made some nice moves. But not enough for me to go, okay, they are maybe an average team. No. I'm not there yet. No way. I'm not there yet. Let me give one more take before I go into their schedule and my offseason grade. So the reason why I don't think the Jets offseason was all that bad, because I like the young guys they did in the draft. Some of the veteran free agents are good for like a year, especially in a year where you can be better than Miami. But here's what people aren't talking about. And this is why I don't factor in some of these 2027 first-round picks much into the offseason, but for some teams, I do, depending on the situations. And everybody deals with the offseason differently. The Jets now have 3 first-round picks for 2027 draft, which is loaded with talent. Because you have the Cowboys pick from the Quinn Williams trade, and then you have the Colts first-round pick from the Sauce Gardner trade, plus your own. Okay? And I know one of them was involving, I think it was Green Bay and the Colts, whichever one is the lowest, if I'm correct. So both of those teams, I think, are expected to fight for the playoffs. I would say they're in a really great spot for next year, because if there's a quarterback that they love out there. Now, I don't know if they're going to be able to get Dante Moore or Arch Manning, because those guys might go top 5 to 10. But depending on how the Jets finish out and where they're slotted, they have a shot to land a big-name quarterback in the draft. Now, again, Jet fans go, well, we've ruined Darnold. We've ruined Zach Wilson. Do we really want to go through the same thing over again? Well, you tried Aaron Rodgers. It didn't go well. So where else do you have to turn? You have to find some way to improve this roster. Geno's got not many years left. Cade Klubnik, is he your answer? We're about to find out in preseason if he could be maybe a starter. Okay? But I think the Jets are making the worst kept secret in the league. They're drafting one of these quarterbacks with one of their 3 first-round picks this year. Maybe it's their own. And then with the Colts, Cowboys, or Packers picks, depending on where they're slotted at, that's when they're going to go get some other needs. And depending on how those 2 teams do, 3 really, the Jets could have a much better roster next year that could be a middle-of-the-road team in the AFC, maybe a playoff team if they draft smart. And I think the Jets are sneaky up cap space-wise. They might be loading up 2027 as we're going to go for it that year. And I think that's important because there's a lot of quarterbacks in college, like Dante Moore and Arch Manning come to mind. But then guys like Lenore Sellers from South Carolina is not bad. He's got upside, but he had a bad year last year. John Mateer, I don't know. Julian Saint from Ohio State, do you really buy in too much for him? Damon Williams from Washington, solid as a player. Okay, Sam Levitt from LSU is okay. All right. I'm thinking of some other guys, but there's like 5 I've just listed off, and there's probably more that I didn't mention where we're going. They're eyeing one of these cats. And that's what I think the Jets are doing right now for 2027 to be their year, where they make a huge jump, roster-wise and everything. Let's go to their schedule. Let's see how many wins the Jets can get this year. At Titans, game 1. So Robert Saile plays his former team he used to be the head coach for. Funny how the storylines work. I am saying that is a loss, game 1. I think the Titans beat the Jets. Home for the Packers. No, the Packers win. At the Lions, loss. At the Bears, loss. Home for the Cleveland Browns, a win. At New England, loss. Home for Miami, win. Home for Vegas. I like Vegas a little bit because I think they made some nice moves. Hint for the Raiders episode. I'm going to say you beat Vegas. I'm going to say 3-4. At Chiefs, 3-5. At home for the Bills, 3-6. At Chargers, loss. At Miami, loss. So 3-8 going into the bye week. Not a lot of expectations, clearly. But subpar, maybe a little better than they were last year. Home for the Broncos. No, that's a loss. At Arizona, I already said loss. Home for New England. No. Minnesota at home with Kyler. I can see a win being there, but I don't think they could slow down that offense. I'm going to say a loss. At Buffalo, loss. I think the Jets will get 3 wins, and then that back schedule for them, I don't think it's going to work out well. The only game I could see them maybe winning is Minnesota, but I have a Vikings fan that is praying that doesn't happen. I think this team's a 3-14 team. They're going to be picking high. I do think there's a scenario where they do land one of the big name quarterbacks. Maybe they're eyeing somebody like Cam Coleman or Jeremiah Smith. If they're going to be somewhere in the 3-14 range, maybe it is a top 5 pick candidacy. I just think they're not, like Miami, I said was 2-15. They're 1 game better. Because, and they might be competitive, but I don't think they can win enough games unless they make a couple patch moves, which I don't see the Jets doing until 2027. So, overall, this is the grade I'm going to give the Jets. And I know people might be surprised by this, but I understand what they're doing. And I don't think this is as bad as people think it is. And I know I'm going to get heat in the comments. I kind of am going with a B+ here. Because I really like the draft guys. I think all these guys can make instant impact guys. And I even like D'Angelo Pons being a guy that can play snaps. And again, there are holes. Like, I don't mind DeMario Davis and Geno for a year to fill the gaps until 27 when you could build more needs. They did keep Will McDonald and Breece Hall. Could have been a lot worse, which is huge. I just don't know if they can convince those guys they're building for the long term. And that's where I'm not mad if I go with a B or lower, but I'm a little higher on what they're doing for the young draft class that they did, and I really like this young draft class they have bringing in. I'm going with a B plus because they know that they're not going to do well this year. They just need to show improvement. I don't know if they're going to get enough improvement, but they're really building for 27. Because they know where they're at. They know they're building for the future. That's why I probably went with a B plus. And I think, again, this is not as bad of a roster as it was last year. It's a little better, but it's not much better. I still think they're going to land a top pick, which they want to be for one of the great players they can get in this draft coming out. So that is my grade for the Jets 2026 offseason. Make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We are 5 subs away from hitting 50. Come on, you guys can do it. Just hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell. So that way you guys can get all the latest content, especially the preseason episode where I will give my Super Bowl 61 matchup, winner, and my playoff teams for this year. You don't want to miss out on that. You can also follow me at LoungeTimePod Yes, I've tweeted a little bit more recently this week. I'll be tweeting more in the preseason because I'll be keeping an eye on some of the headlines going on and Patriots preseason football tonight against the Colts, so I'll be watching that as well. So I'll be tweeting as well for that. But make sure if you have a question for me on the show, you can tweet at me at LoungeTimePod and I will answer it on the show. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to Lounge Time. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. And I will see you guys next week with more 2026 offseason grades.